I'm Phoenix Savage. This is my installation called Mojo, and it's a, so the way to describe it is that you can see it as a talisman that if you were to pray or just generally speak, it sort of helps to activate what's being done and said around it. It helps to magnify the presence and the energy of it. It's actually a original two-dimensional drawing that people in my Yoruba community use sort of as a two-dimensional piece of paper in front of their shrines to activate that. And I wanted to take that two-dimensional form and turn it into a three-dimensional installation. And so this pretty much mirrors that 2D image. And what you have are upside down lids that are sort of like Bend-Aid dots, but there's a raised surface in the lids, which are called odus, which come from the Yoruba tradition of Ifa, and they are sacred texts. So you have to understand the patterns to know what they mean, and I can't explain that part because I don't know all of them myself, but I know that collectively when you put them together, they make a lucky charm. So that's what you end up having in that respect. The lids are made out of cast iron. I primarily work in cast iron. This was the larger of the sculptures or body of work that I made solely of cast iron about a year ago. And it was originally exhibited in a solo exhibition at Stella Jones Gallery in New Orleans. And the usage of cast iron for me has to do with sort of also looking at ancestral connections to my work and the usage of material in relationship to those ancestral connections. And a great deal of my work, or the subtext of my work, has to do with issues of labor. And sometimes that's a little hard for people to discern. But either I am speaking specifically about labor, or I'm using labor-intensive processes to illustrate labor. And in this case, cast iron illustrates labor in two ways, in the sense that it's extremely labor-intensive to do. But also it illustrates or enhances or not necessarily magnifies, but pays homage to labor in the sense that there were things called iron plantations, which honestly I never heard of that before in my life, but it's so true. The first iron plantation was in Massachusetts, so people think of plantations as, the deep south or whatever, but iron plantations, obviously they had to be in places where you were going to find the necessary natural resources to make them, so water, iron ore, and some other mineral that I can't think of right now, but there are like three necessities, and there is a vein. If you look at a typographical map of the United States, there's a vein of these minerals that come through from the north all the way down and pretty much stop in Birmingham, Alabama. And so, hence you have why Birmingham is a big steel place, why Pennsylvania is a big steel place, because of these particular minerals. But anyway, at some point, someone figured out that they should just use slave labor to do the labor of mining the iron, mining the minerals, and chopping the wood and keeping it going until you can produce what they call pig iron. So there were iron plantations, but the one in Massachusetts that started like in the 1600s actually didn't employ African Americans, it employed Scottish immigrants. So, employed might not be the best word, but in their case, but they were indentured servants, so they apparently signed some contract and stayed for a while and moved on. But for years, it was actually a process. The larger ones were actually used slave labor. And so I used cast iron to pay homage to that. And also, again, the process of casting iron is extremely laborious. So, let's see. I think Mojo, why I do what I do. The whole magic of it. And I mean, also I like alchemy. I'm really into the whole notion of alchemy, and that it, to make anything requires there's some form of alchemy involved in that process. There's some form of invisible physics that's taking place in everything that we do. Only we live our lives in such a way that we don't stop to be aware of that invisible alchemy or that invisible physics to, the fact that this solid thing really is a whole bunch of particles moving, and they're moving so fast that it becomes a solid thing. So, it sounds kind of crazy, but that intrigues me. And so I tend to place some form of alchemy in my work, not as overt as this, but generally there will be something about my work that has that hidden element of alchemy. In this case, I actually chose to sort of overtly demonstrate that by creating the three-dimensionalization of this talisman. In Yoruba, this is called Ogbe Ashe, which I think translates into Garden of Command. And so hence you have this conglomeration of these activating odus that when spoken, bring forth this extra richness, just like a garden would bring forth something to benefit your life. It's the same thing. So when I used to see the title, I was like, why is it called Garden of Command? But you command it, it gardens, it grows. So hence it makes perfectly good sense when you break it down. It doesn't, at this point, this exhibition, it's really great for it to be here because it's quite befitting that this piece was selected for the show because I'm about to leave and go to Nigeria, where the whole system of Yoruba and Ifa come from. And I'll be going to the actual homeland of Ifa, where it was born, to a town called Ile-Ife, and I will be there for almost a year to work on a new body of work under the Fulbright program. So I'll be casting, and I'll be doing traditional casting. I won't be casting in iron, but I'll be using either brass or bronze, but I'll be doing it in a more traditional way in which they use the earth as the furnace and so forth. So it'll be very interesting. It's also very labor intensive and also takes a lot longer to cast, to bring forth something. So I will be working on a whole new body of work around that. It won't necessarily, in that case, so much be about labor, but the process will be laborious. So it still will resonate into that larger theme that I have going on in my work. And I think that about wraps it up. I'm Phoenix Savage. That's Mojo. Thank you very much, Mojo. Yay!